I'm very, very informal, very, yeah, I like it actually. It's interesting. It does make noise at the back, but anyway. What I usually say in a lecture is, and I think something that Muslims need to learn to do as part of revival is challenge everything you hear. That includes challenging me. All right. So I ask people. In fact, if you see some of my lectures online, you know when the Q&A starts, I say, does anyone have any questions, comments, or contentions? And I'll take contentions first. So if anyone wants to disagree with me, say, I'll give you priority to speak first. Okay. So, and because I think it's important, one of the biggest problems in the Muslim world today is we take things blindly from anyone. Right? Even if they are like I say this, and this is perhaps going to be linked to what I'm saying here. The problem in the Muslim world is we are focused so much on who and not what. It's who is saying it, not what is being said. So we say, oh, this is an alim. We take anything because he's an alim, we must take. But then there's alims that disagree with each other and have very big disagreements, and sometimes even a bit of takfir, even, right? Yeah, with each other. And it's then, well, my scholar says this, so I'll just follow him, and your scholar says that, so I'll follow him. And it becomes, which scholar do you follow first controls your thoughts for the rest of your life, right? That what's it called? The initial bias, they call it. So you're biased by the first thing you hear. The first scholar you hear that says, I'm an alim, oh, then I will do taqleed of him blindly for the rest of my life, even if hundreds of other scholars that disagree with him. You say, no, but he's an alim. How can I disagree with an alim? I'm a lay person, I don't know much. No, that's incorrect. Even the Sahabas used to ask the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, it was in the battle of, before the battle of Badr. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam put the Muslim encampment in a certain place. So a Sahabi said to him, is this revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is it an opinion of war and tactics? So the Prophet Muhammad said to us, this is the opinion of war and tactics. So the Sahaba said, okay, if that's the case, maybe we should position on a more defensible ground over here. So the Sahabas asked questions. And the Prophet Muhammad never condemned them for asking questions of them, right? It's if you disobey, that's the problem. But asking questions, getting clarification, maybe trying to understand better what the Prophet Muhammad is saying, and even giving advice on something that's not revelation, a matter of revelation.
And questions are the half knowledge.
Yes, yeah. And also Imam Malik said half of wisdom is to say you don't know, as in don't make assumptions. So I'd say that please challenge everything you hear. And if anyone knows me or knows what I've said in the past is I actually prefer debates to lectures, because I use debates to teach the audience. I need someone that is very well versed or an expert on the opposing side of any particular discussion. So once you see a debate, and if I can still make the point and I show the Islamic position is correct, despite that opposition, that people learn much better from that, as opposed to a lecture. I often say this, I say that anyone can sound convincing if they're the only person on the platform. Anyone can sound convincing, of course. Anyway, so to go into what we were saying, if I were to rewind. So when I use the word transcend, I didn't mean ignore the existence of, okay? But transcend is like if you see two kids fighting, or not kids, let's say you're having an argument with another guy or lady, adult, but they're being like childish. They're arguing over something petty, over something that's silly. And you say, I'm not going to continue arguing with you, right? I'm going to transcend, I'll walk away, or I'm not going to. You don't ignore that person exists. You don't ignore the argument you had. You just don't engage in it. Because you don't want to make it to be serious. You don't want to give them seriousness that they don't deserve. And it's the same thing with the West, which is we know they exist. Sure, we should know what ideas they say. The Quran talks about kufr. It talks about the mushrikeen of Arabia. It talks about the Romans. It talks about the Ahl Kitab, Jews, Christians of the past. It talks about the ancient Egyptians and their kufr. The Quran and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to know kufr, so you can avoid it. Wants you to know about shaitan, so you can reject him. Right? So I, in a sense, pioneered a study. I probably wasn't the first person, but I'm just saying I tried to, let's say, publicize it, make it something more knowable to Muslims, called Occidentology. From the Latin, Occident means Western, or ilm al-gharb if you like, right? But not Occidentalism. Why is that? Because in the West they have something called Orientalism, right? And that is the study of the Eastern cultures through the lens of the Western society. And I didn't want to do the same back, because Occidentalism actually does exist. China has a way of discussing the West. North Korea has a way of discussing the West. Russia has a way of discussing the West. Actually, ironically, Russians were the people that gave the West the label West, Zapad, in Russian. They actually in the 19th century Russian scholars and philosophers, they said these are the Western peoples against the Slavic peoples, and then the West adopted it. Prior to that, the West has called themselves the Christian nations, or before that they called themselves Christendom, or in Latin Christianitas, the lands of Christianity, which didn't include the Eastern Christians, funnily enough. Anyway, so Occidentology, I call it ology, not ism, is because I wanted to say, let's study the West like we study ancient Egypt. We don't have any bias against ancient Egypt, per se. We don't say, oh, we hate ancient Egypt, or we have to defeat them, or we have to fight. No, they're a dead civilization. Right now, we just want to know what they believed, what they say, what's these pyramids about, what's these carvings about, what's hieroglyphics they're writing about. What did they believe was good and bad? You know, what was their religion or religions? Right? We don't have as the expression in English is, a horse in the race. We don't have anything invested. We don't have there's no consequences to whatever the ancient, whatever the ancient Egyptians believed. It's not going to have a consequence for us, right? So the West, everybody studies it in an objective way, in an unbiased way. Okay, so they believe this and they believe that, and okay, whatever. So we should study the West exactly the same way.
Without opinion.
Without assumption, without opinion, without trying to...
Without any bias.
Preoccupied.
They're just a civilization like any other civilization, and they have their own worldviews, they have their own madahib, schools of thought, they have their own history or collection of histories, and that's it, defined by historical circumstances. And a lot of the West is defined by their interaction with the Islamic world, actually. So in this way, Muslims have actually influenced the West quite a lot. So that is to make the West the subject of study, not the object of emulation. Right? Do taqleed, object, right? That's the difference. So I was talking about before the adhan started. I was talking about hikmah. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in a hadith that the hikmah is the lost property of the believer. If the believer finds it, he's more entitled to it. So if the non-Muslims develop a way of having a highway code for cars, I think Pakistan might need that, and it's purely based on considerations of health and safety and most efficient way to manage traffic, to ensure that there's traffic flow, quick travel, but also safety. As Muslims, we would simply ask the question, do we care, does Islam require us to care about health and safety of travelers? Yes, the Sharia requires this. Is it the Emir's concern? Would the Emir be concerned to look after the health and safety of Muslims? Yes, the Quran and Sunnah says yes. So then is the highway code a good hikmah to achieve the Sharia objective? Yes, because the highway code doesn't care about Christianity, atheism, socialism, Islam, whatever. It's just, if you want to manage your system the most efficient way possible for cars and safety, this is how you do it. It is almost like a physical science almost, because it has no assumptions in it.
Like the Diwan from the Persians.
Like the Diwan from the Persians. And I'll tell you something shocking. Quite a lot of what you think is Islamic was borrowed from other civilizations, right? Islamic symbols. I'll start with masajid. You know those domes on the masajid? Have a guess where they came from. They weren't inventions by Muslims. I mean, sure, Muslims improved it, but
They were adopted from the Russians, something. They had onion-shaped domes. You know that something.
earlier than that. Earlier than Ivan the Terrible.
Ivan the Terrible.
Yeah,
His
earlier.
cathedrals had onion-shaped domes.
Yeah.
And Muslims, the Ottoman Empire, I think, we adopted those domes. We turned the structure, we changed the shape of it, but they come from Ivan the Terrible.
Actually, earlier than Ivan the Terrible, and
I think they gave it to us.
the Ottomans adopted more exaggerated dome and onion structures, yes, but domes were before that, and mosques had domes before Ivan the Terrible. Anyone guess? But it's the same place that the Russians got it from. I'll give you extra clue if you know your history. I'll give you extra clue. The Russians view themselves as the successors to which empire?
The Romans, some God.
Romans. The Eastern Romans, well, okay, they just call themselves the Romans. So we're not the Eastern Romans, we're the Romans. Right? So the Romans, like the Hagia Sophia, it's dome there. It was Roman architecture. Muslims conquered Roman lands. They saw this as good architecture to have high vaulted ceilings. The dome structure is good for supporting it. So let's use that. Let's borrow that. The dome in the mosque comes from the Romans. Right? But the dome doesn't have an aqidah. Right? The dome doesn't have beliefs or assumptions about anything particular to any civilization. It's just an architectural feature of, if I have walls and I want to create a ceiling that doesn't need a big pillar in the middle, a dome is a good structure.
So this is where the hadith, there's a hadith that comes in, and the point I want you to talk about is, where did you draw the line? Because the hadith says, do not imitate the mushrikeen, right? So that hadith comes to us through many scholars as well. We say, do not dress like them, because Islam was to be a way of life for everybody. It wasn't for the Arabs. It was for the Indonesians, Malaysians, Indians, Persians. They had their own culture, right? So somebody could wear, a thobe. They could wear shalwar kameez. They could wear, a shirt and tie, right? But when it comes through the hadith, some people would say, do not imitate them. So do not wear a dress shirt or a tie, because they do that. Where do you draw the line? Draw the line of not taking something from them, and where do you take it from them?
Okay, well, there's a clear meaning, which is we don't imitate their deen. That's one thing. And there's another clear issue, is we don't make them the object of imitating their urf, their culture or customs. But if they all become Muslim, then their culture and customs is fine. The point is, we don't make non-Muslims the object of our emulation, our imitation of them. Psychologically, it's a psychological principle. But if they're all Muslim, then we can share the urf of the customs and culture of any civilization. We took a lot from the Persians as Muslims. The Persian civilization defines a lot of Pakistani culture comes from Persians. You have a question, sister?
So tasdeeq originated. The tasdeeq came from Christians, right? It was adopted from Christians. They used to praise their Lord using little clay beads on a string.
It was
Also came from the
So is it like sinful to use it now to do?
I know there's debate amongst Muslims as to now the Sahabas would use date stones and just stones unconnected to each other. And people say, oh, there's a bid'ah. If you drill a hole into the date stones and you put string, this is the bid'ah. Now, I'm not going to get involved in that debate, but simply, does drilling holes into date stones and making a string or some kind of connection to them, because it makes it useful to carry it around and easier to use to make counting, is that a good or bad thing? in of itself, there doesn't seem to be any basis in the hadith or Quran that says making a change or a technological development to make things easier to do the
There's
ibadah.
the digital counter that people can
You can use digital counter if you
I
want.
don't think there's anything wrong with
Yeah,
that.
whatever physically works to aid you in your ibadah. But if Muslims did it because, let's do it because the Christians are doing it, then that would be the wrong reason to do it. So a lot of it depends on intention, the reason for something.
Word dirty electricity. Everything emerged of West civilization from electricity.
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 Yeah, I mean,
use word dirty electricity.
Yes.
okay.
Because they call everything is not value neutral. I mean, everything has some value attached to it, whether it's a good value or the bad value. But this is again the argument. I think let's hear him for the next 10 minutes and then we can,
So it's like a knife. Best example is a knife. A knife you can use to cut your bread and feed a poor person with that bread, or you can stab someone with it and rob them. But is the knife good or bad? Knife doesn't have any morals attached to it. It's just a tool to do things with. It's not good or bad in of itself. It's what you do with the knife that determines whether it's good or bad. So there's a basic concept that Muslims always understood, something called madaniya and thaqafa. Madaniya, from the Arabic root word Medina, for what pertains to the city. The city was the place of technology, right? The farmers didn't invent technology, or maybe they could, but if you wanted, in the ancient world or the medieval world, if you wanted metal implements, new engineering technology, whatever kind, you go to the city, you buy it from artisans, engineers in the city, that's who specialize. Farmers specialize in farming, these engineers and artisans in the city specialize in making things. So Madaniya is what pertains to the city, i.e. technology. So technology has no aqidah. You can take as much technology as you want. Knowledge of the natural world has no aqidah. So physics, maths, chemistry, biology, where it's discussing simply the mechanisms and processes which are observable, and the Quran tells you to observe. See how Allah created the heavens and earth, see how He created the camel, see how He created the mountains, see how He created the whole the universe, everything in it. So the Quran tells us to observe. Science is just observation. We can take all this stuff. Sure.
I just want to ask that about all these sciences that you mentioned, there is one science, the space science, which is really popular these days. You're saying we should observe these things, but how do we interact with these things? And for instance, for space science, isn't that really beneficial? The purposes that it is being used for currently to inhabit Mars or other planets, are these beneficial purposes that Muslims should also invest their energy in?
There is this aspect of space technology where they're actually doing medical experiments in space. There is that aspect to it too. We don't necessarily have to, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that because we have to colonize Mars. There are different aspects. For example,
If I take this question further, I want to add to both the things.
Are we
that
going
you
to begin the question session or let him speak for 5 minutes more?
Okay.
It's
I think
because
it's
it's in a coffee shop, so it's like it's a bit more, seems a bit
I think let him
informal.
convey his thoughts in like 5 or 10 minutes, then we can take question and answers better. Because otherwise, maybe we will understand. So, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we can summarize.
I mean, look, it's look, when the West encountered Muslims, Islamic learning, or Muslim learning, not Islamic, Muslim learning, in the 10th century, in the 11th century and 12th century, so 1000s to 1100s, they conquered Sicily, Muslim Sicily. They discovered Muslim learning about cartography, maps, geography, chemistry books. They began translating loads of Arabic books into Latin. The ones they didn't translate were Aqidah books. They didn't care about Muslim Aqidah. They didn't care about Muslim fiqh. They only cared about Muslim. What did the Muslims say about chemistry? What do Muslims say about physics? What do Muslims say about these new engines? Oh, a windmill. That's a good design. That's a good. That's better than getting a donkey to go around the grindstone every day. A windmill is free energy, right? So they took all these, they took Muslim agriculture, they took this stuff. They understood. Madaniya, we take. Aqidah from the Muslims, we don't take, right? If only we have the same principle. We don't take Western Aqidah. We don't take Western assumptions. And the issue is, it's not about the person saying it, which is the problem is the case, like, oh, this is a Westerner, I should listen to him. Well, I'm technically a Westerner because I'm from the West, right? You're technically a Westerner because you're from the West. But, or like Salman al-Farsi was technically, it was a Persian, right? Even though at that time, the Persian Empire was mushrik. They wasn't Muslim. You know, well, don't listen to Salman al-Farsi, he's a Persian. No, he's a Muslim. So, if I can boil it down to its most simplest way, I'll put it down to this simple formula. Should and shouldn't. What you should do and what you shouldn't do, you only listen to Islam. Knowledge about what is and what is not, you can take from any source of knowledge that you can find when there are proofs. You can take proofs for what is and what is not. So science is about what exists and how it works and all this stuff, you can take from anywhere, as long as obviously it's proven. People say, what about the multiverse theory? That's an assumption. So we don't take assumptions, right? Well, we only take what is observed. So we want proofs. We take, but what you should do, what you shouldn't do, good and bad, we take nothing from the West. On this, we only take from the Quran and Sunnah that our purpose in life defines what is good and bad, what we should do, what we should not do. That is it's a simple formula. So what knowledge about what is not, we take when it's proof with dalil, and what we should do, what we shouldn't do, we take from only Quran and Sunnah. Well, of course, with dalil. You know, with fiqh, you need hadith. You need, the scholars have to tell you dalil, right? And it's simple as that. So it doesn't matter who says it, what says it. Funnily enough, just to challenge this point, there was a Sahabi who he tied down a jinn, right, a shaitan, right? And then the jinn told him, if you let me go, I'll tell you some good knowledge, right? And he told him. And then the Sahabi went to the Prophet Muhammad to confirm, right? And it was confirmed. So even the shaitan could tell you the truth, but you don't believe from him because you have to confirm it. But still, it doesn't matter really then the who, as long as you have the proof for the what. Yeah, the proof of what is being said. So that is how, if the Muslims understood civilization like this, we would be revived very quickly.
Okay.
And I think I'll leave it there.
Let's have some question answers now.
Sir, I have a contention.
Yes.
Can we start with contention?
Please.
I was just,
Please.
no, I was going to Lars answer and then you can go ahead.
From here.
Yeah, Mars answer, colonizing the Mars, you could answer that. If it's
Colonizing
beneficial
the-
for Muslims to colonize, I mean not to colonize, but to be okay with these, seeing them as a very beneficial action, to see the colonization of Mars and going on extraterrestrial endeavors, and then we can ask more questions.
Okay, the colonization of Mars. So,
Like all these scientific.
I'm not a mufti, so I can't give you fatwa. I always make sure to be in my lane, as they say, stay in your lane. Unlike Lahore traffic. So, but the question would be, does it serve a Shari'i objective or aim to send people to Mars and to try to terraform Mars into an Earth-like planet? We'd say, well, that takes resources, and the scholars would look at this and say, what's the benefit of this? Are we giving dawah to Martians? We don't know these Martians down there. Are there problems on Earth that require those resources more importantly than us? Or is there some way we could learn from anything in Mars that would help people on Earth? Well, if there is, then maybe there's a case. But these are questions that we have to look through the lens of, does it serve a Shari'i objective? And as I said, if it's a case that if we go to Mars, the soil that you can do experiments on Mars that allow you to cure cancer, let's just say. Then you can say, oh, there's a Shari'i reason to go to Mars then, for example, maybe there's a reason to do that.
Say if you don't know it yet,
Yeah.
but the Quran says to ponder on the universe, the stars, right? And it calls upon you to open new frontiers of knowledge.
Yeah.
does that qualify as a Sharia objection?
As I said, it all depends on the intention, and of course the intention must be halal, must be a requirement, must be mandub or fard, and the means must be halal. If it satisfies those criteria, then why not?
Go to the contention now. So.
Okay, contention.
My contention.
Please.
Please allow, okay, mashallah, you said that natural sciences we should take, right? What is and what isn't. We should take that from the West and not their aqidah. My humble contention is this, that the West, their direction in any sort of knowledge is based on whether it is what is and what isn't, is based on this very basic premise that man has 2 arms, 2 legs and a head and has sexual desires, and that's it. They don't take this thing into consideration that man has a certain purpose and has a very real living connection with God, Allah, that is Allah. So when they do go into any sort of research or any field of science or knowledge, they're already missing out. They're already a large chunk of it. Yeah, a large chunk of it missing. So I want to take the example of Carl Jung, for example. I love the guy. Freud, not so much. Carl Jung got close to God but never found him. And I do believe that he had something there. But he just before reaching God, he stopped. Or maybe he died, I don't know. Should we take his psychology or not, for instance? Or should we take this knowledge knowing that a huge chunk of it is missing only because the very basic premise of man in the West is that man is an animal. Whereas for us, he's a creation of God, created, has an end, sent with a particular worldview, and has a purpose. If I may, just for a few seconds elaborate, even if we are about to say, for example, we are about to study psychology, the way a Western person will approach psychology is, okay, this guy, survival of the fittest, capitalist society, want to make money, sexual desire, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you try to do it in Islam, of course you will enter it all in the purpose of life and the pleasure of Allah. And Fitratullah allati fatara an-nas alayh. This man is designed on the fitrah of Allah. I understand the fitrah of Allah through Asma wa Sifat. It's a completely different thing. So my contention is, maybe you can correct my ummi self, my contention is this, that perhaps to say, and I'm going to try to sound humble about it, perhaps to say that what they say about what is and isn't, we should take that and not aqidah, perhaps this presentation might be a bit simplistic.
Okay.
That's my contention.
Thank you, sister. Actually, no.
Sorry?
It's, I was saying to him, sorry, he said it's a question of philosophy. Not exactly. So I tried to be, certainly as a public speaker, I have to be very precise with my words. And sometimes I speak very fast and I mention something and it's not caught. I added something very clear onto this, which is we take what is and what isn't, knowledge about what is and what isn't, we can take from the West with proof.
With proof.
Remember I said that?
Yeah.
Yes,
So the West has no proof that God doesn't exist. The West has no proof that the purpose of life of human beings is purely to pass on their genes. They don't have proof of that. This is assumptions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I added that little. It's called a caveat. I added this little thing attached to the premise, which is we take knowledge about what is and what isn't from anyone with proof.
Alright, Jazakallah.
Yeah.
Jazakallah.
But you mentioned a very good point that I would like to clarify about psychology, because they call it science.
What about the social sciences as a whole?
Yeah, sociology. Now, there's a problem here, and I'm glad you raised it up, because that's actually a very good example for us to see the confusion in the West where it lies. So, the psychology and sociology, they deal with something that's not tangible, not physical, the mind. Okay, like for example, social consciousness. So that's sociology. Psychology, the mind. What's in the mind? Ideas, beliefs. Where can I see it on on a CT scan or MRI. I can't.
You cannot measure it.
You can't measure it, the mind. Now, sure, you can see which neurons are excited by certain. When the person tells you, and you have to take their word for it. I feel excited or I feel sad, and you do an MRI at that exact moment in time. You can see, well, this looks like it correlates to what someone is feeling sad or an emotion, or they feel excitement, or some reaction of some kind. Yes, neurology we can take. Neurology is just about what the neurons do. The structure of the brain is all physical. It's all physical stuff. Perfect. Psychology and sociology, now here's a problem, right? Because it concerns the non-physical. You have, and anyone that studies psychology here, and I'm going to assume it sounds like many of you do. I also noticed that sisters tend to study psychology more than guys do. Guys do engineering more than the physical stuff, right? Yeah. But although I think in countries which are more developing, women tend to do more maths and physics in these countries, but in the West they tend to do more people-oriented studies. Anyway, so the problem is sociology and psychology is they don't know what the mind is, what it does, what it's meant to do, how it works, what is meant to, what the human being should be or shouldn't do, what was intended. Because to believe that the human has intention, you have to make an assumption or a belief about something higher than the human being as a physical body.
Exactly.
Right? And this is where they bring assumptions in. Anyone that studies psychology will tell you that there are different approaches in psychology, all based on assumption, psychoanalytical or other such thing. These are all based on tons of assumptions. And Carl Jung, and he was great at this discussion archetypes and. I'll summarize for those who don't know a lot about Carl Jung. Carl Jung tried to explain the mind through, in essence, stories. That he feels that humans like to adopt stories, or that their mind works through stories, in a sense, which have certain narratives, certain
Dreams and such.
And I mean, Sigmund Freud, he pioneered talking about metaphors, I think, and other such things. And I'll give you one example of where they go wrong in this assumption. So I'll give you one typical example. So, Sigmund Freud observed that the young boy looks at his mother, and it forms a lot of what he later on, a woman he'll marry will sometimes resemble their mother in many ways. And likewise with a girl, the man she marries will sometimes resemble her father. And sometimes when people fall in love, what have you, they say, I feel like I've known you my whole life, because they see some attributes in that person that actually looks familiar to them, because it really represents the masculinity or the femininity that they saw in their parents. Okay? Yeah. So what does Sigmund Freud say about this? Well, that must mean because the man, the boy, he sexually desires his mother, and the daughter sexually desires her father, and at a young age, and it just manifests in these ways. So no Sigmund Freud, no. The Oedipus complex, Greek story. This is not used for psychology terms. This is your assumption, Sigmund Freud. There's a joke saying about Sigmund Freud. So no, people should say some Sigmund Freud. No Sigmund Freud. That's just you. Anyway, he interpreted it that way. But there's a more commonplace, much more rational explanation, which is that a child's encounter with defining the opposite sex is in their parents. For a boy, it's their mother, and for the girl, it's their father. They see that's what masculinity looks like. This is what femininity looks like. And then when they see a woman, or when they get older, and they see a woman or man that resembles what they were trained and developed to recognize as masculinity and femininity, they will feel familiar. They'll feel, oh, this is the opposite of me. This is what I need to complete myself with, right? So there's a more simpler explanation. But Sigmund Freud and his assumptions led to telling a story, and it was a very weird and crazy story. But that's the issue, is psychology and sociology is filled with assumptions. And it's no coincidence that left-wing ideologies like Marxism, or more precisely neo-Marxism, existentialism, Nietzsche, they are heavily quoted by psychologists because they start to speculate about what humans want and what they are here to do and why they're doing what they're doing, what motivates them ultimately. I mean, sure, we all agree, yeah, humans have reproductive desires, humans have survival desires, humans need to eat, comfortable. We all agree, these are all observable characteristics. But the story you tell to explain it is the assumption, and that we don't need from the West, right? So, to reiterate, we take knowledge from the West and from Chinese, from Japanese, from anyone, from the Mayans, from the Aztecs, from the ancient Egyptians, if they were, knowledge about what is and what isn't with proof. No proof, we don't take.
There's as Rousseau calls that fact-value distinction. And what he explains is that there's a world of facts and there's a world of values. The world of facts could be understood very easily. I mean, you can understand it, the cause and effect and all these things. But the world of values is something that you can't understand it rationally. I mean, the moment you start creating these rational foundations, is there you go wrong. I mean, this is what Rousseau said, that in the world of values, any structure, any framework that we have developed is wrong. It can't be developed. But then the problem was that as human beings living in this society, we need the value structure. We need the values. So they have to come up with some ideas like utilitarianism or other ideas like that, the harm principle and things like that. But these were not completely rational. So what do you say about that? That the value, the distinction between fact and value?
I say values are objective, and good and bad is objective. And I'll tell you how this is. In the West, they might say it's subjective. There's debates amongst utilitarians about. Some utilitarians say that good and bad is objective, depending on what you desire. So if I desire to get a car, I think cars look nice, they look cool, what have you. It's only because it's an objective fact that society recognizes that cars look nice, or something like this, right? So they'll say, so it's objective in that sense, but society is subjective, right? I have a better explanation and it's just from the Islamic worldview, very straightforward. Good and bad only comes from purpose. Without purpose, no good and bad. And I explain why. There's a car outside, let's say, right? It has the taxi that brought me here, and they charged me extra for the AC. It's like, what? Extra for the AC? Just turning on the AC and so on. They said, oh, charge you extra. Okay. They turned it on. I know. They turned it on. No cold air came out of it, right? Right. Was it a good AC or a bad AC? Bad. Why?
Cost you more and then you can work.
Sorry, what?
The purpose.
Yeah, it was not fulfilling the purpose.
It's not fulfilling its purpose. The purpose of AC is to provide cooling. It wasn't fulfilling its purpose. So I can objectively say that's a bad AC. A good AC is one that is cooling. Okay.
Purpose defines.
So if the purpose
That's very important.
of human beings is that we make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the basis for our actions, we do what pleases Him, and say this action will please Allah. Done for His sake, it will please Allah. This action will displease Allah, will make Him, He will be unhappy with this, so to speak. Or He hates this action and He loves this action, and this action has a reward, has an eternal consequence. This action is a bad action, also might have an eternal consequence. We now have a basis for good and bad. My purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your purpose is the same. And worship means that I make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the determinant of what actions I should do, what actions I shouldn't do. So if I'm doing actions that please Him, I'm fulfilling my purpose, and inshallah I can say I try to become a good person. And if I'm displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I become a bad person, or I can become a bad person, or at least, as the Prophet Muhammad said, your soul is in a bad shape, right?
But what about?
You should never say I'm a good or bad, but you say my soul is in bad shape, or it's in maybe a gooder shape.
But if the Satanists, they would argue that, of course, they would do anything that pleases Satan.
Oh, Satanists. Oh, yeah, they would say.
So,
but the
how would you differentiate between the two? Because both of them are serving a purpose.
Right.
So the right purpose and the wrong. How would you differentiate objectively between the right purpose and the wrong purpose?
And that's a great question.
Yes.
All right. So, how would you know? So, to reiterate, you said, how do you distinguish between a correct purpose and a bad purpose? Because someone can have a bad purpose.
Yes.
They can say, my purpose is to gain power in this country and basically make everyone serve me. Right? That's my purpose. My purpose is to take power, make everyone serve me. That gives me a vision. I'm driven to it. I'm be very efficient at it. I'm very good at it. I can be good at it or bad at it. But the purpose is it good or bad? Right? So then the question is, what purpose then? And here's a phrase, has meaning behind it. Right? Now I mean I'm using English here, so I'm find a good Urdu approximation for this. Right? When people say, like if you maybe you go to university and you're at university and you just spend every day playing games, just talking to people, having a laugh, joke, not really studying. If people say, does your actions have any meaning here? Right? What's the meaning? What is the meaning of your actions? You're wasting your time here. You're not fulfilling what you came here to do. Why? Because meaning is, what is the consequence of your actions? No consequence. And there was a question that was asked to an atheist, a guy I debated, Andrew Copson, he was a British atheist guy. And someone asked him in a conference, a fellow atheist said, because he wanted an answer, in a billion years, what would any of our actions mean in a billion years? So a billion years time, all this stuff we're doing, we're trying to make changes and improve the world, whatever it might be, what meaning will it have in a billion years time? Maybe the world doesn't even exist. Yeah? What was the point of it? Because it won't remain. What does the Quran say? Everything will be destroyed except Allah's watch, His face. Yeah? Everything will have no meaning, no consequence, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Including Iblis and Shaitan, what have you. They have, whatever purpose you made of them, it will have, they can't give you an eternal consequence that they determined. Only Allah will give you an eternal consequence.
The ultimate purpose.
So, in the hereafter, nothing has any. All the false purposes will have no meaning. The taghut, the false idols, will have no meaning, and only those actions you've made for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have meaning, and that determines what is a true purpose and a false purpose.
I have a
so that brother was hand up first.
Yeah, so basically all this discussion that we're having, right, it's a good intellectual stimulation, but the end result is what is the takeaway from the discussion, right? So are we saying that along as Muslims, we have been chasing this Western advancement, let's say that's what we want to call it, the lines got blurred along the way, that what should we take from them and what we shouldn't take from them. And in that, maybe some of our definitions got messed up or they got screwed up along the way. So let's say, how do you define justice? How do you define peace? How do you define good or bad? Basically, our reference point got moved or shifted. And is that something we should take away from the discussion, that maybe that's something we should revisit and correct that, so that we can fix our direction and head in that direction?
Perfect question. The next logical question is, all right, now so what? Right? So it's all great purpose. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the basis of our actions. That has any meaning, anything. Great. Now what? What does that mean in practice? What it means in practice is very simple. Sorry, let's just finish deliberating. Right. Okay.
He is our scholar.
You have a question, please.
आपको अरबी में बात करते हैं.
वालेकुम सलाम.
كيف الحال يا شيخ؟
الحمد لله.
أريد أتكلم معك عربية.
तो आप लोग करेंगे तो आप उनको ट्रांसलेशन
نعم. تكلم من لغة إنجليزي من فضلك.
I think you live in the Western culture. You live in Western culture.
Born and raised in it, yeah?
Yes, and you know the thinking and psychology of these people.
At least the English, anyway, English, Portuguese.
Their authorities, they strictly condemn the system of Islamic system, particular system of political, I think Khilafah.
Yes.
They have no problem with the Salah, Song,
The individual
everything,
aspect.
everything.
Yeah.
They have no problem with these individual rituals. They, why their psychology, they strictly condemn the system of political Islam.
Okay, so why does the West condemn the system of political Islam? Okay, so I'll just finish answering his question, and then I'll link. That's a good question to ask. So, I'll give you an example of what it looks like to live with purpose. At least what I've seen and observed. So, people think if I'm becoming more Islamic, I must do i'tiqaf, I must go to a cave somewhere, I must abandon the dunya and forget about these things, just focus on my salah, my tajweed, make it nice and beautiful, and so on and so forth. Yeah. It's interesting, there were a group of people at the time of the Sahabas who had better tajweed than the Sahabas. They had better salah than the Sahabas. They had perfected the salah better than the Sahabas. Amazing, right? Better than Abu Bakr, better than Umar. You're like, who is this? Who's better? I mean, like, who could be better as a group of people, apart from Prophet Muhammad, better than Abu Bakr and Umar? Khawarij. Right? So they thought I need to perfect the rituals, right? But they didn't. They missed out on the understanding the purpose of Islam, the purpose of the Muslim Ummah, and so on. They spent time in killing Muslims instead. But anyway, what it looks like having the purpose of life is like this. Very simple. I know it sounds very simple, but it's like this. And everyone who becomes a Muslim, it's natural for them to think like this. They usually think like this until Muslims come up to them and say, no, don't do that. Oh no, why are you going too extreme? Just, these cultures, you should follow these cultures too, you should dress like, train, whatever. This is what happens. So, it looks like this very simply. So, if everything that is not fi sabilillah, not for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has no meaning to it, then it makes your life very simple. It doesn't mean now, oh, I can't go to a coffee shop, or I can't go out and play football or cricket or something. No. But your whole way of how you measure things change. I'll give an example. So in the current culture, at least in many Arab countries, maybe Pakistan similar, although I'm getting to learn more about Pakistani mindset, but I mostly spent some time in Arab countries to see their mindset. They taught Islam like this. The kids taught like this. The parents say to them, okay, so you need to grow up, you need to make sure that you maintain the family honor. Society expects you to, if you're a boy, you need to get a good job, good money, and then you can get married, have lots of children, get a car, get a big house, and so on. For women, it's told you must, depending on which Arab country you go to, but usually, most countries will be, make sure that you're ready for motherhood, and you just, and don't bring the family reputation down by not being a good mother or not being a good wife or what have you. Make sure that people don't think your husband doesn't like you or is angry at you or anything like this. You have to maintain the family reputation and so on and so forth. And then make sure that you guys are better than these neighboring tribe or neighboring town or whatever, because you have to maintain your honor, reputation. There's a lot of this stuff is like social fighting almost, like social ranking system. Oh, and by the way, while you're doing all this, if you can, do your 5 times namaz, siyam, and so on and so forth. And if you can, don't lie and cheat and be polite. But sometimes if you can't be successful without doing that, then Allah will understand. It's durura. It's like durura. It's necessity. You can lie and cheat and do bad things. But
we're not that different here.
Okay.
Well,
but I would say it's one of degree. In Arab countries, it's like much more extreme degree, I think. Than, I have a theory, and this is my speculation, so it's not absolute certain, so I could be wrong. I have a theory that Arabs do everything to extremes. So if Arabs are righteous, they're very righteous, and if they are champions of Islam, they're one of the best. But if they're jahil, they're very jahil, and there's no in between. Right?
We need to take you on a road trip.
Okay, this is my theory. I don't know if it's true.
you also have that in the West.
Actually, now that's my speculation, so I could be wrong. Okay, now what would it look like if you have purpose? So does it look like if a person has purpose? Is it different? Do you not get a car? Do you not get a house? Do you not get a job and so on? No, it's some of it might be similar to a jahil person, but the completely different reason, completely different aim. So every Muslim, it's like, okay, my purpose in this life is to make Allah's kalima, the kalam of Allah, the highest in my heart and amongst al-nas, amongst mankind and the people. So in society, Allah's hukum is the highest. In my heart, I'm fighting to make Allah's hukum the highest. And that will take a lifelong journey because it's a constant fight. Most of us will never fully achieve it 100%, because they will be perfect, but it's about the fighting, it's about the struggling. Right? Anyway, so what does it look like in practice? It will look like this. A Muslim says, I don't care what my father or mother or society expects. What does Allah expect? Right? I have a friend of mine, he gave a really good example. He said, there's 4 questions a human can ask themselves. What does my parents expect? What does society expect? What do I want to expect? And what does the creator of the universe expect? Okay, so this last one would be the only one you judge. You say, okay, so all right, let's say you're a young man. What am I going to do for my life? Okay, so I have to work to provide, because I want to have a family to earn fi sabilillah. I want to stay away from zina. I want to, so that I get Allah's pleasure. I want to have a good family, lots of kids, so I can build them to be mujahideen, scholars, inventors, teachers of the future. I can build them up and I can get sadaqah jariyah from them. So I get a continuing sadaqah from them after I die. I want to maximize my sadaqah jariyah. I want to cure cancer. I want to invent something that benefits people, so I get that thawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I maximize Allah's pleasure. I say that a Muslim is a thawab capitalist. Right? We want to maximize thawab. Right? Is it saying all the same words?
Thawab capitalist, yes.
Yeah.
That's thawab or something.
Yeah, ajar, thawab, yeah.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to obey my parents only in the halal, and only because I want to worship Allah, not because my parents expect it from me, but only I want to please my parents, they looked after me and so on. I want to show gratitude, because gratitude is gratitude to Allah. So gratitude to people is gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to do my job, but I want to be the best at my job. I want to perfect it, I want to improve it, because as the hadith is, working is a worship, and I want to perfect my worship to Allah. I want to make Him really pleased with me, so I want to be the best. If I'm a cab driver, I'm the best cab driver. The most efficient, on time, accurate. I study the routes, I have knowledge, I read maps of Islamabad beforehand, so I know how to get to Beria Enclave and not get lost, picking up a guy from England, right? Yeah, right? Like in England, taxi drivers, they're taught to actually memorize the maps of London. London's a big city.
Black cab drivers.
Yeah, sure they have GPS, but before they qualify as a taxi, they have to memorize it because this is before the GPS anyway. But even after GPS, doesn't matter. It makes you more efficient. You still know your way around. You're a better cab driver than just with GPS by itself. Sometimes GPS doesn't give you the best routes as well. So I want to maximize efficiency. I want to make sure that for the amount, I only have a limited amount of time on this earth. I want to maximize how much impact I make with this little time, so I get maximum ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm going to be more efficient, do things quickly, because the more I can do my work and the more benefit I do here, I can put more time for my family, which I get thawab for that. I can spend more time doing my salah, doing qiyam al-layl, all kinds of things, tahajjud. I can have more time for this. I can do all these other things. I want to maximize my time. I want to have leisure times. That leisure time I can use to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will take my family out, or if I have more money, I can take my family out and give them good things, so I get reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I can, with doing good things in society, I can improve the society, improve the state, make the state strong for Islam, and the state itself can take the flag of Islam around the world. So everything is linked together. Even things you mean like, oh, I'm hungry, I feel like a pizza. Well, you're giving nourishment to your body, right? You're giving nourishment to your body because your body is an emana. Okay, and maybe I invite someone with me, we talk, we have a good discussion. I invite a poor person, I give them part of my pizza or something like this. Everything you do, you might do many things which are similar to a person who is a jahil, right? You're not completely different human.
But the purpose is
But the purpose, the scope, the aim is completely different. And it makes you want to improve. And that's why the Muslim society, 1400 years ago, developed, improved, expanded, was very efficient, right? Whereas now, Muslim world, it's pretty much just surviving. Just day to day, can you survive with the maximum amount of doing nothing, right? How much can I do nothing today? And how much do I have to work, or do the bare minimum? Arab countries are like this. Pakistan, maybe not as much. I think, you guys know better than I do. I'm still studying Pakistan. But in Arab countries, it's about basically, look, how much little can I do in my workplace so I can go back to my house and just relax and or play backgammon with smoking a shisha and having my mint tea, talking to my friends about idle stuff, idle talk.
There's a hadith about this, that whatever you do, the best way you can.
excellence. We have to achieve the excellence.
Do it the best way.
And also hadith about staying away from idle discussions that don't have any meaning or purpose behind it or any aim. Because there's so much knowledge in the world. I can't read it all. I rely on people, experts, scholars, people like yourselves, teachers, students, researchers. You can teach me stuff. I learn every day from my discussions. If you anyone who has coffee with me, in my previous visits to Islamabad or what have you, I just talk about ideas and things. I want to learn because you guys study stuff I haven't studied. So teach me. I want to learn.
So
I enjoy those conversations.
When you say that the Muslims have kind of like lost it, they've lost the purpose. They want to do the bare minimum and everything.
Yeah.
What is the purpose that is driving the West towards efficiency and productivity and all those? And the whole renaissance that happened, right? And then, what caused all of that and what is driving all of that right now?
That's a great question. Now, he asked me a question, so I don't want to ignore that. That's a great question. Your question was? Okay, so your question was, why do the West have a problem with Islamic law?
Political Islam.
Okay.
Political Islam.
Great.
I think Khilafah.
Perfect. I'm going to answer your question through his one because it's connected. So you know how I told his question was, why is the West so driven to be pro-efficiency, development, improving? Is there something? So efficient or more efficient, at least in us, more driven, they want to improve, develop, they seem to be driven by a purpose. What purposes do they have if they don't believe in God? Did I correctly represent it? Okay, I'm going to answer that. So do you have a question you'd like to add to that? Yeah. Sure.
So my question is that you said that we're supposed to treat the West like a China. We adopt their technology, we adopt their sciences, but we don't adopt their beliefs, we don't adopt their traditions. We just transcend them. My question was that what does West do that we didn't transcend over them like we did with China? That we're still locked in their beliefs. Like there's a lot of
long story short, because of colonialism, the West created all these countries in the world, and so because they create these countries, they create the education system that create the elites of these countries, and so these countries resemble versions of the West, imperfect, very imperfect versions of the West, and in some ways that's a good thing. It's imperfect. In other ways, it's imperfect in terms of they didn't adopt the same full aqeedah of the West. And now I will get to your question because it's connected to that one. Yeah. What is the Western aqeedah? Okay. So I think one of the questions that I think many Muslims ask themselves is, there's a hadith by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said that there'll come a time where basically, in essence, I'm going to summarize it, that Muslims will be a state of weakness, and they will love life and fear death, and ask why. So they'll ask like why this weakness. So that they'll be huge in number, but they'll just be like the froth that comes on the waves, basically, like basically useless. And it was asked, why would they be like this? And so because they have wahan that comes into their hearts. And what is wahan? Love of life and fear of death. But the West love life, and they fear death, and they seem to be very driven, and very strong. So what's happening there? What's going on? Okay, and the best way to describe it is this: the West, in a way, they didn't learn it from Ali radiallahu anhu, but I think it was Ali radiallahu anhu who said this, and in essence, the West discovered this. If the exact phrasing of the Athar is, if you don't fear Allah or the Day of Judgment, at least be free in this life. Right? That's what the West learned, not from Ali, but he was, Ali, was it Imam Hussein, I think it was. I have to check the Athar on this. I have to check it. So it was about, don't live under a tyrant ruler. Look, if you love life and you fear death, what have you, if you must want to just go after your enjoyments, your personal enjoyments in life, at least be free in this life. Don't be under a tyrant, because you're still suffering. You don't care about the hereafter, and you're still suffering. Right? So if you don't care about the hereafter, at least enjoy this life, right?
At least win and not a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Make the best of your time here.
Yeah, make the best of your time here. I'm summarizing it, but that's in essence what the West, in a sense, learned, right? Was they I'm not going to give the names of all the thinkers, John Locke and others who say this, but basically they argue that why should you be slaves to tyrants who can just kill you if they don't like you? If you live under a tyrant ruler and they can do whatever they want to you, you're their slave, you're their property, and that's not living. That's one of the key ideas that began to create liberalism. That created liberalism, was do what you want, just don't harm other people. Why? Because it says, because you'll be able to do what you want if everyone does the same thing. They respect your boundaries, you respect their boundaries, you can all do what you want then. It makes it's hikmah to achieve the goal. The goal being enjoying whatever your desires want. That's the hikmah to it. So in essence, and this then leads up to the answer there. So what the West learned is, they will say that we learned hikmah. They call it the Enlightenment because they say we learned hikmah. We want to enjoy life, and we simply discovered the wisest way of enjoying life is to be not under tyrants, because tyrants are crazy and they can do all kinds of weird stuff. They can lock you up for anything they don't like. And at the same time, they can, you can, if you respect other people's boundaries, let's say you don't physically violate somebody, attack them, steal from them, it's beneficial for you because then you won't get attacked and people won't steal from you and they won't attack you and then whatever. So let's whatever. And that was the Western Enlightenment, you could say. I'm heavily summarizing it. To give you a more academic answer, would be the invention of individualism, which states that there's nothing higher than the human individual.
Then it came down to human.
So forget society, forget religion, God. There's nothing greater than the human individual, and so if we protect the human individual, we give them the most freedom possible, limited by the freedom of their fellow humans. In essence, we treat them like gods, but all gods being equal, right, to each other.
Within their own realm.
I'm not even kidding. They
violate the other boundaries.
They didn't use the word God, but John Locke said every person is the absolute sovereign, the absolute malik of themselves. Malik, sovereign or possessor. You own yourself. There's nothing higher than you concerning yourself. And he mentioned property as well, but that would be changed a bit later on. But there's nothing greater than you or yourself, except other people who are equal to you. That everyone an equal king unto them. That was his phrase. So the West say this is hikmah to achieve the objective of enjoying this life. Right? That's what made them. So when they make inventions and technology and internet and cars and all this, it's about this makes life more enjoyable. This reduces suffering. This increases pleasure.
They want Jannah. They want Jannah in this life.
Yeah, as much as possible. Yes, go ahead, sister.
Yes, but there's like a lot of different kinds of enjoyment now.
Yeah.
Transgender community and everything.
Yeah.
I literally, everyone's so concerned about what they say. Because free speech and they're not free speech. Because everyone has to watch their comments every single second. Like I literally saw a Reddit, an entire Reddit thread of people asking whether it would be disrespectful to talk about a transgender actor who played a role before they transitioned as a female. Would it be disrespectful to say they were a girl back then? It was an entire Reddit thread on it. There is no free speech anymore.
There's a reason for that. Because, long story short, there's actually liberalism failed 120 years ago. Most people don't realize. They call it classical liberalism to call it the old form. It was a more pure liberalism back then. Some conservatives still are classical liberals. They say it used to be good back then, the good old days. But what happened is they discovered a whole bunch of things. They discovered that liberalism, all these different pleasures and desires, contradict each other. And a society of everyone contradicting. So, for example, let's say a guy is told, you know what? There's an oppressive societies that stop you from looking at women sexually and lustfully, or saying lustful things to women. And you want to do that, don't you? So I tell you what, you have freedom in society. Go forth, as long as you don't physically touch a woman without her consent, say what you want, look at her what you want, act like you are what you want, and so on, including even something called, used to be a problem in England, but then it was made illegal, flashing, right? Where exposing people, guys would expose themselves to women in public. It used to be a thing in England. Like 30 years ago or something like this, right? Then it got made illegal. So, but you're not physically touching the women, but go ahead, go and do it. Don't be like these oppressive societies that stop you from doing this. But to women, it's like, okay, go outside and no one's going to stop you from going outside enjoying life. But as a woman going outside, seeing men look at you in sexual ways, saying nasty things to you, and of course, exposing themselves or making suggestive things, you feel it makes you suffer. You feel bad. You feel,
Takes away from my freedom.
Yeah. So then the West realized, that makes you. So everyone giving everyone freedom makes each other suffer. Okay, now we're going to start banning things. Okay, ban this, ban that, ban this, because maximum freedom for everybody causes suffering. And 120 years ago they realized this, and they started to make bans. That's why in classical liberalism, opium, drugs, no problem. But then they realized, but drugs enslaves humans to addiction, and we're meant to free humans, right? A drug addict is suffering. Okay, let's ban it. But people say, but liberalism says that it's your choice. How dare you tell people what to choose? And they say, but if we let them choose, then they suffer, and it's a contradiction. Okay, whatever, let's just ban it. They start to ban things. And they even tried to ban alcohol in America and in England. Although it didn't become law, but it's called the temperance movement, led by Christians, funny enough. They tried to ban it, but it didn't get past law. In America, they tested it out, and then people didn't like it, so eventually they withdrew it. Because alcohol is a drug, like anything else, right? So all these contradictions arise, and here's one they discovered. It was John Stuart Mill said this. Ironically, he's considered to be the champion of free speech, okay? But he said something, he didn't realize that this would be later used to stop free speech. He said that there's something worse than the government banning you from saying what you want. It's society banning you from saying what you want, okay? Because the government can't tell what you're doing in your house, or maybe if there's no policeman around, they wouldn't know what you're doing. But society is all around you, family and everyone knows what you're doing almost all the time, unless you're by yourself. Yeah?
It's the
Right. So they said that. So he just made it as a point, saying I don't think he thought much about the consequence of this. And then liberals later on, and liberalism today is actually called social liberalism, or liberalism, I call it 2.0, the update, because the first one failed. They said, if people express negative opinions about gay people, about transgender, about what have you, just like a man on the street looking at you saying rude things or saying nasty things, makes you feel bad, that makes transsexuals feel bad about themselves. It makes gay people feel bad about themselves. If you say, oh, you are komelut, how dare you, what you're doing is disgusting, you make them feel bad. And that makes them suffer, so you have to shut up. Yeah, your free speech has to shut up. You don't have to be rude, I mean, as Muslims, you're not rude. But that was the argument. So in Europe, they invented hate speech laws. Were brought in, and in Canada as well. Yeah. I'm not sure about Mexico so much. America is formed from it still has a lot of early liberalism. The first version of liberalism, the free speech, the First Amendment is. I mean, liberals are trying to attack the First Amendment constantly, and conservatives who are following the early liberalism, they are the ones who defend the First Amendment. I say that, but they themselves want to ban things too. So anyway, they're hypocrites as well. So that's why what you noticed about you can't say anything against transsexuals. That's why liberalism 2.0 says no. Early liberalism said yes because they're confused about what makes people happier or not happier, and you have to be silent because other people are happier, but that makes you miserable. But who cares or what have you? And it's a contradictory system. And I'll finish up with answering his question because he's been waiting very patiently, and I thank you, brother.
Alhamdulillah. The last question, inshallah, we conclude.
So liberals have a purpose in life they invented for them, a fake one, a false one. But it's a simple purpose in life, which is that all humans deserve to be given freedom as they define freedom to be. Yeah? The freedom I described. Yeah? That the individual is the highest thing in society is not higher than them, God is not higher than them, religion is not higher than them. There's nothing higher than the human individual. And they say that this is our purpose in life as to be individuals, they say. Okay? To do what you want, to obey the God of your own hawa, desires. You are your own God, and you should obey that God. That is their argument, right? I mean, it's not the official state policy, but it becomes the philosophy of people. Okay. But then they say, but this is not the purpose of life of only Western people. Because everyone in the world are humans. So everyone in the world deserves the same purpose in life as us. Right? So they'll say, we don't like Sharia. As they say, Sharia, right? Yeah? We don't like it because it oppresses the purpose of life. It denies the average Pakistani who was born into society they didn't choose. They always say like this, they didn't choose. It denies them the ability to live according to their purpose in life that all humans have a right to. So they will do the liberal version of jihad, called liberal interventionism, as it's called, liberal jihad, where they will expand. They don't need to necessarily take territories. They just need to change those territories to being liberal, to make the kalam of liberalism the highest.
So what you're saying is that like, Muslims are born into an oppressive community that we didn't choose. The same can be said for like Western people. They were not born in this community. Like I spent 6th grade in Canada. That was the last grade I spent. You could tell that because 6th grade is when you're 11. You're right before teenager. You're not completely hooked into that mindset, but you still think that it's wrong to not be hooked into that mindset. You're still learning it. So you could tell that the other children thought that being gay was wrong. Like they used to use gay as an insult. They used to. You could tell it was wrong. If you ask most black people, I thought, no, there's nothing wrong with that. You could tell that they were brainwashed. They didn't choose to be born in that society either.
Because they recently changed the curriculum of Canada, right? So now they teach it in grade 4, the Transgender Act. So they have 2 mommies, 2 daddies, it's okay now. Like at teaching level.
It's talking about, they don't have the right to live the purpose of their life. Basically, We have come full circle from your original point.
They call
is
it
the
the oppression.
decolonization.
They call
where
the oppression of Sharia.
it
Because that's
is
what
this
they say.
relationship of the civilizer and the civilized. I am the one who's going to civilize you, and you just take what I have to say.
I'll say two quick points. I know
Yes,
the time is
like,
ticking. Yeah. One of these points is this: that firstly, look, if you look at any civilization throughout history, they always viewed that they are the center of the world, and everyone else are barbarians. I think the word for China in Chinese is the Middle Kingdom. They're in the middle of the world. Everyone else is barbarians around them. Right? They're in the middle. Okay. Ancient Egyptians the same. Everyone, Romans, everyone thought we are the center of civilization. Everyone is barbarians around them.
Arabs and the Ajams.
Yeah,
Same.
Yeah,
Same.
same.
So this is not distinct to the West, because many people who are unfortunately become more obsessed with the West, they say the West is uniquely like this. No, it's a human, unfortunate, human tendency. It happens all the time. But the West, they have a purpose in life that it drives them individually. So they want to have a life that's maximum enjoyment. They want to get maximum money. They want to get more efficiency, because efficiency means more money and things like, and more money means more things you can buy for your pleasures and spend it on. And they want to spread their deen to the world, because they will say that the way to create peace in the world is through everyone being liberal. So there'll be no more wars if everyone has the same deen. And also they say that we are here to rescue every human being in every society that doesn't have access to this deen, because it's their right, and they call it human rights.
Human rights.
So, but we believe in rights for humans, just not your definition of rights for humans. So this is why they don't tolerate the Sharia in Muslims. Well, in the Muslim world, they will say we don't want you to do this. They interfere in our countries. If we told them we want you to change laws in your country, say how dare you? This is our country, not your country. You focus on your own. But then but they always want to tell us how we should live and what we should do. Whereas as us as Muslims, our purpose in life is to establish the Kalam of Allah as the highest. But we have a different mechanism. Right? Our mechanism is this, that we don't believe that every human being, it must be forced on every human being, whether they like it or not. They have to adopt it voluntarily, because that's the purpose of life, is to voluntarily worship Allah.
We must just give them the atmosphere or the place to do it.
Yes. There's one exception to this rule, which is Muslims, we can and we have, our aim is to create peace in the world as one aspect of worshiping Allah, peace and justice between people. We don't force people to change their deen, but we have done, which is we have said we will guarantee your security. So you non-Muslims, you always fight each other and kill each other for nationalism and silly things. You shouldn't have an army. Who will protect us? We'll protect you. All right? I call it the Pax Islamica, to use a Latin term, the peace of Islam. Right? So that's why the expansionist jihad, right, wasn't about changing people's deeds. It was simply about, okay, like you fight each other, you oppress each other as non-Muslim states and countries and what have you. We're going to change this. Islam will guarantee your peace. You live your deen, you want to be a mushrik, or you want to be a Jew or a Christian, whoever, we won't interfere with you. I'm not the Hanafi school of thought will say that we don't interfere with you if you're a mushrik, but we will guarantee your peace. And that's it. And then prosper, enjoy whatever you want to enjoy, what have you. We'll give you dawah, you don't need to accept it, but we'll just give you dawah, and that's it. So that's the difference.
Let's conclude. I think let's conclude.
Any comment? If you look, and whenever Muslims conquered any place, we never decimated any indigenous people. That's just not in our history.
Yeah, that's what it is.
We never forced anybody out, and we never changed their law systems or what have you. We have it on the history books.
We'd love to